5 years ago, I was walking down the same sidewalk for our first show with Blue Zoo TV, presented by Hikari, featuring Fluval, to introduce something fishy. It's been 5 years. Let's go see what Dave's up to now. David, thanks for having us back.
Hey, no problem.
Other than in the past 4.5, 5 years, you haven't grown any taller. What's changed around here?
Grown in other ways. Stock is constantly changing, you know, new inventory, new display tanks, and trying to breed new, exciting new forms of fish, color variations, etc.
We talk about breeding. We get a lot of emails from people that are interested in the breeding process. You obviously being a master breeder of cichlids. We're here. I'd like to spend a few minutes down in the breeding area talking about the breeding of cichlids, some hard, some not so easy, but maybe teaching somebody and giving somebody a little bit of an aspect of the breeding process.
That'd be no problem.
Dave, at Something Fishy, we're at Breeder Central here at your location, down the basement. I have a question for you before we get going. When they laid out this building, could they have added maybe just another brick or two in the ceiling of the basement to make it a little higher?
Yeah, they probably could have, but in 1925, I guess people were shorter back then.
Thanks. So I want to talk a little bit about breeding. You do a fantastic job of breeding constantly on a big scale, but you can break it down for hobbyists and how they can become successful in breeding, because you got a lot of action going on right now. Explain some of it.
Well, we're constantly a lot of mouth brooders of Lake Malawi. These containers right here have these, what they're called venistus. We wait about 10 days, maybe 14 days before we strip the female. And once they're about 10, 14 days, they're already almost basically free swimming, or they have their egg sac. That's much easier to pull the fry at that stage. And it gives the time for the female to recoup. She can hold up to about a month's time, and she may not eat that during that whole time, holding that fry. But this gives her time to recoup and breed maybe a little bit sooner. So we bring them in here, and we stick them in containers, and we bubble them. It keeps the fry moving, oxygenates. Obviously, we do not feed. Once they're practically about this size or a tad bigger, we move them up to a 5, maybe a 10-gallon aquarium. Once they get to a certain point, then they move on to a bigger tank, either a 29, 75-gallon, or even a 240-gallon grow out.
As far as getting to the point of those fry, what was the initial setup of the original tank? How was the mom and dad, the male and female, to get to this point? Did you have to do water changes? Are you taking other fish out of the tank? Or has it been a natural setting for them for months?
It depends on the particular fish. Some of the fish I mix like 2 different types of species. I don't mix anything that's closely resembled or in the same genera, a family, because then you can have maybe crossbreeding. Typically, we don't decorate our tanks and the hatcheries to make them look real great. We just put a lot of pots, plant stuff for the females to hide from the males. We do water changes weekly, bi-weekly. It could range depending on the bioload, how many fish, the size of the fish in the tank. It could be 20% to 50%. We feed a varied diet. So some of that can play into the effect of them getting a breed.
When you lay out a tank, how long typically should you see some activity as far as the breeding process? I know it probably depends on the species, but if something doesn't happen within a tank within a month, 2 months, do you have to do something different? Do you have to reenact it?
Yeah, sometimes just doing a water change and moving a decoration around will get them all riled up, whatever. Sometimes giving them like a treat of a chopped up night crawler or something like that, that gets them excited and maybe promotes the breeding.
As far as breeding, then the hobbyist has to be very diligent and look at the tank pretty much every day to see what's going on.
Ideally, especially certain cichlids. Cichlids is a large family fish, and male can get really aggressive and really rough up that female. It's best, that's why, to have a backup tank where she can go into a tank. Like I have one here, she's holding and she's not ready to be stripped yet of the fry. So she's in here by herself, she's safe, she's not gonna get harassed by the male, and the chances of her spitting out too early, especially if she's a new female, or eating the eggs or the fry in her mouth, is less likely.
When we come back, we're going to look at breeding on a much larger scale with Dave Hale from Something Fishy. Love fish? The premier consumer fish event of the year is coming to the Schaumburg Convention Center November 15th to the 17th. Meet Zeb Hogan from Monster Fish, see world-class aquatic speakers from around the world, and visit the live shark encounter. Let your kids show off their decorating talents in the Kids Aquarium Contest. Plus the latest equipment, supplies, live fish, and corals too. It's a family event everyone will enjoy. Join us in Schaumburg November 15th to the 17th. For tickets, visit aquaticexperience.org. Dave, before we went on break, we were talking about breeding on a large scale. That large scale also can be ratcheted down to a single tank that somebody might have, but explain all of the bigger scale of things, because you've got fry in pretty much every tank going down the wall.
Yeah, when you end up with about 400 tanks, about 21,000 gallons running, it becomes massive. It's basically kind of like an assembly line, and typically like this batch right here is about 2 weeks old. That's a rubescent peacock out on Akara from Lake Malawi. And Dad is right here. That tank will mark the date when we pulled them, so we know what it is and when we pulled them. And then once they're in the container, in about a week or two, we'll upgrade them into the smaller tanks. And it's basically like an assembly line. So they keep moving. We keep moving them, emptying tanks, moving to the next tank. You don't necessarily have to have a huge tank to breed stuff in your home. You could have one single tank. These right here are 75-gallon tanks. The bigger tank will help grow up the fry much quicker than being in a smaller tank.
Let's say you have 2 tanks at home, and you actually are lucky enough to have fry out of both tanks. Can you merge both of those fry into a 1 10 or 20-gallon tank for the time being?
It depends on how many fry, because obviously the bioload can be much greater. Some species can co-op together very easily, no problems. And then some species, from experience, even as babies, will eat other babies. So you have to be selective on what you're gonna put together.
Dave, on the other side of your building is your predatorial housed fish. And speaking of predatorial, these stingrays, they seem a little hungry.
Yeah, they're always hungry, kind of like me. That's a large female marble maturo, and that's a young male marble maturo. These are from Colombia. They are Amazon freshwater stingray, average maybe about 2 feet in diameter. They're awesome. Just a great pet. They're a predator. You can't put too much in there with them because they'll try to eat them. They need obviously a large tank, a lot of filtration. So you over-filter the tank more than anything. This is a black wolf. I've had him maybe 6 months or so, and he's double his size. He's obviously an eating machine. It's definitely a predator from South America. This is another one of my displays of my personal predators. This is a 155-gallon bow front, glass aquarium. I have in here electric blue Jack Dempsey, a young one, a female regular Jack Dempsey. This big one, it's kind of half black, that's a Pearseye, Central American cichlid. I have a mix of Central South Americans and some oddball prehistoric type African birchers. This is a peacock bass. This is the main eating machine in this building, next to Bertha over there. And it doesn't waste no time. Waiting for that worm, eats and eats and eats. It doesn't seem to ever stop. My Polly over here, I have to get the worms down to him. There you go, buddy. Yeah, that's another one of my fun tanks.
So it's been a while since we've been here, but in the 5-year span, I knew Dave would find something to charge me for. Dave, what you got?
I got you some great cichlid fry here, so you can raise them up and be a master breeder just like me, Frank.
Just like you.
Just like me.
Always wanted it.
Here, you even get a sucker too.
Bluezoo TV, presented by Hikari, featuring Fluval. A sucker born every minute.
Yes.
Bluezoo TV is presented by Hikari. All fish love Hikari. And featured by Fluval, a Rolf C. Hagen company. Bluezoo TV is partnered with Carib Sea, bringing science to life. And EcoBioBlock by WonderSave Products. To email the show, go to bluezootv.com and follow us on Twitter @BlueZooTV.